The Smart #1 is clearly one of the more interesting EVs available in Malaysia today. It's certainly cute, quirky, undoubtedly fashionable, but it does have quite a few questions hanging over it. Number one, it does come with premium pricing here in Malaysia. Can it actually justify its price? Does it actually feel like a premium car inside and to drive? Plus, there is no denying that this car has Chinese origins. So does it drive like a Chinese car or a European one? And lastly, this is claimed to do 440 kilometers on a single charge. Can it actually do that on local Malaysian roads? Let's go find out all that and more in this video. Let's begin with the brand itself. Smart started off as a collaboration between Mercedes-Benz and the watchmaker Swatch in the late 90s. It specialized in really small, tiny city cars with quirky styling and plastic body panels, and it did rather well to begin with, even here in Malaysia. But through the years, people's interest started to wane down, and just a few years ago, Mercedes-Benz sold half of its shares to China's Geely. So now it is a proper JV, a joint venture between Mercedes-Benz and Geely. Here and now, Smart is being treated and marketed as a full premium brand. You can even buy it in select Mercedes-Benz showrooms. Plus, even though this brand is being managed by Proton here in Malaysia, we have been assured there will be no shared facilities between Smart and Proton. You will get a proper premium car ownership experience through and through. The easy way to look at it is this. While BMW has the Mini brand for its more affordable models that are angled towards younger, more fashionable crowd, Smart is the exact same thing under Mercedes-Benz. The #1 is the very first model in Smart's EV-only future, with the larger #3 coming later on. For the Malaysian market, we have 3 variants to choose from, starting with the #1 Pro. This starts at 189,000 ringgit, while the premium that you see here goes for 219,000 ringgit. At the top of the range, there is also the #1 Brabus that goes for 249,000 ringgit. To me, the #1 Premium is the Goldilocks option within the range. It has a bigger battery than the Pro for a much longer 440 kilometer range, with the specs being a lot better as well. At the same time, it also has a much more friendly face that fits the Smart brand far more than the overly aggressive Brabus version. And it's also quick enough to drive and a little bit more comfortable than the sportier version as well. If it's me buying the Smart #1, I'd definitely go for the Premium. Just like the Mini brand that Smart is clearly gunning for, its biggest selling point is its styling, its looks. The #1 still has the cute, funky and quirky look that we've known from Smarts of before, and I think this is easily one of the more successful attempts at reviving an old brand into the modern EV era. With this car, they've done so while still keeping its unique character and identity without making it look too generic like in certain BYD models, or even too controversial or even ugly like in the case of certain BMW and Mercedes-Benz models. The last mention is actually a funny one because the #1 was designed by Mercedes-Benz designers. But you know what? I think this is far more stylish than the entire EQ range. From the EQA, EQB, EQE, EQS, I think this has a far more complete, far more cohesive styling all around. In certain markets, the #1 even carries a design by Mercedes-Benz badges on its side, but unfortunately is not available here in Malaysia for, licensing reasons. Around the side, you can see the #1 has a very fashion-forward design. It's just about the right size at under 4.5 meters long, with the wheelbase stretched as long as it can with the wheels at the very ends of the car. The rims are 19 inches, filling up the wheel arches really well, and at the top you've got this contrasting floating roof look to add a uniqueness to it all. You've also got flush door handles, and when you open the doors, you'll see the windows are actually frameless. That's a nice sporty touch. And while everything you can see on the surface is designed by Mercedes-Benz, underneath that is all Geely. This rides on Geely's own dedicated EV platform called the SEA2. This is shared with the Zeekr X and the very latest Volvo EX30. From the brands I've been mentioning, Mercedes-Benz, Mini, Volvo and so on, it's clear to see Smart's premium aspirations and connections are really strong, and they go much further than just skin deep. Round the back, the Hashtag 1 is admittedly far less interesting than the front, but it still has a few cool things going for it. It has the exact same lighting signature back here as the front, and the way it lights up as you approach the car is very inviting. I also like the illuminated badges at the rear corners. Also unique are the completely blacked out rear windows on the car. This is commonly known as privacy glass or privacy glass in Europe, and it's one of the first times we are getting it as standard here in Malaysia. But above all else, my favorite part of the Hashtag 1 is the wide variety of color options available for it here in Malaysia. With most other cars, if you see a photo of it in an interesting color on the internet, more likely than not, you won't be able to buy it in that exact color in Malaysia. With the Smart, however, they've made the entire range of colors available. You can have it in bright yellow, pale green, electric blue, bright red, and even matte grey. That's exactly how you should market a car to the young, affluent, and fashionable crowd. Moving on inside, the Smart Hashtag 1 continues to impress because this still does look like the concept car that was first shown to the public quite a few years ago. It's not very often that you get a full production car that looks even remotely close to the concept, but this one certainly does. I love this T-shaped dashboard that sits really high. It really cocoons you within the cabin, and it's all really nicely put together as well. If anything, this gives me the vibe that this was a car designed by, say, Apple rather than something coming out of China. The actual build quality though is a bit of a mixed bag. On the face of it, it looks very well put together. The top of the dashboard is all nice soft touch leather and plastics down here as well. But as you move further down, it does get a little bit hard down there, and the whole thing creaks quite a fair bit as well. But what I do like is this knee pad by the side of the driver over here. As I drive along, my knee is nicely padded on the left. That is a really nice touch. In terms of design flourishes, there are plenty. This full white panel on the premium version extends into the doors as well, and even the seats at the front and even the headrest at the top. I think it all looks really flashy. And then you've got the excellent implementation of ambient lighting on this car. All the aircon vents light up, the top of the dashboard as well, the centerpiece over here, they can all light up in multiple colors. I think it looks really good in the dark. One thing about the seats though, they do feel a little bit hard, much more Germanic compared to the very soft and comfy seats we are getting used to in cars coming from China. But on the plus side, you do get a set of ISOFIX anchors on the front passenger seat, so if you're, say, a young mother, young father, you can have your baby safely secured on your left as you drive along instead of putting them in the back out of reach. And on to the things I like is this big massive screen in the middle. This is easily one of the better operating systems in a car that I've tested lately. The center screen over here looks really interesting with 3D graphics and a lot of customizable options. It's very easy to show exactly what you want within the center screen itself. And then you've got full integration of wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and it works really well too. There's hardly any lag, and even in terms of audio, there is just a slight latency there. But of course, it is far from perfect, because let's say you've got your Apple CarPlay screen on, which looks great with a full screen, by the way. If you want to adjust your aircon, you first have to swipe down from the top for it to display all the aircon controls. It would have been much easier to have actual physical buttons down here instead, I think. And even the simple act of adjusting your volume requires you to pull down from the top, clicking on that, and then adjusting a slider. That is far too complicated than necessary. On the main screen, there is also that little cute fox that is an avatar that you can talk to, but I don't find it all that useful. What is properly genuinely useful, however, is the integration of about 70% of all public chargers within the screen over here. You can just press this button over there and it will scan through all the public chargers available around you if you ever need a quick charge. Even for long distance trips, you can just input your final destination, let's say Penang or even JB, and the car will recommend where you should stop for a charge along the highways. This is the only EV in Malaysia to have this feature right now. I think it's absolutely fantastic. With EVs, usually if you're traveling long distance, it requires you to pre-plan ahead. You would likely need an app called ABRP or a better route planner that will tell you where to stop along the way and so on, and that requires some time to research, maybe using the PlugShare app, and you're gonna have to ready your Jom Charge, your Charge EV, your Settle app, and so on. With the Smart, however, everything is integrated within the screen over here and a single app, which is the Hello Smart app within your phone. This is one of the first brand-specific apps that is actually useful to an EV owner, and it certainly puts to shame Hyundai's decision to not even offer an app in the Malaysian market. Beyond that, this car does have a lot of conventional features that I would not have mentioned otherwise, but since this is priced directly against a Tesla, I will have to say it. It's got traditional single stock on the left, a proper gear selector on the right, it has a head-up display up top, and an instrument cluster in front of the driver. Even the sunroof has a sunblind that you can actually close. You won't get any of these features in a Tesla. Last but not least is the 13-speaker Beats audio system on this car. This is standard on the Premium and the Brabus, and it sounds absolutely banging. It's excellent. More than that, you've got plenty of light show within the front speakers as well, and it even doubles up as a warning system. It plays together with the blind spot monitor, so it will blink amber if there's a car around you. I think it is such a nice way to integrate all these functions together. In the back here, there is a surprising amount of legroom. This car may be smaller than both the Mercedes-Benz EQA and the BMW iX1, but this is more spacious than both those cars. You can thank the fully dedicated EV platform used on this one instead of the shared platform in those other cars. Even the seating position on this car is pretty good. You can recline the backrest quite a long way back, and this avoids the typical EV issue of having the floor placed too high up relative to the seat. The Smart #1 just feels like a regular car back here, and it's all the better for it. The seat squab is fairly long, it's quite nice and soft in the back here, and you do get your own dedicated pair of aircon vents in the back, as well as pretty soft touch rear door cards too. Even the floor is fairly flat down there, so you can fit 3 adults in the back here much more comfortably compared to, say, the EQA and the iX1. Mind you, you will get a proper set of mats down here instead of these cheapo Maggie Me carpets. These just screams Proton rather than premium. One thing I don't like, however, is that the rear windows only go down about halfway. That is a bit annoying. Open up the powered boot and you get a pretty decent load bay, much bigger than what you would expect from a car that looks so small on the outside. You can even slide the rear seats forward to give you extra space. All in all, you can get up to 411 litres of space back here, plus a generous underfloor storage to keep all your charging cables next to the big Beats subwoofer. There is an additional trunk up front, but that is a measly 15 litres, which is not useful for anything really. So finally on the move with the Smart #1. Let me remind you again, I am driving the mid-level premium variant of this model. So here it makes 272 PS and 343 Newton meters from a single motor, which is mounted in the rear axle, making this a rear wheel drive EV. This makes it technically more premium than even the Mercedes-Benz EQA and the BMW iX1, because both those models are front-wheel drive, similar to other cheaper EVs. Like I said, this rides on a dedicated EV platform, Geely's own SEA architecture, which is shared among others with the properly premium Lotus Electra and even the Zeekr 001. The rear-mounted electric motor is exactly the same between the bottom two variants, the Pro and the Premium. The only difference between the two is the battery pack. While the cheaper variant gets a 49 kilowatt-hour battery pack, this Premium gets a 66 kilowatt-hour pack. But the difference goes beyond just the capacity itself. The smaller battery pack is somehow the more advanced of the two. It uses LFP technology, so you can charge it to 100% on regular basis, whereas the 66 kilowatt hour battery is an NMC pack and it's recommended that you charge it up to about 80% for regular use. You can of course charge it up to 100% for long distance drives, but for regular daily drives, 80%, 85% maximum. The same battery is also used on the flagship #1 Brabus. The only difference here, there is an additional electric motor on the front axle for a proper all-wheel drive setup. The Brabus offers 428 PS and 543 Newton meters of torque, so it is significantly more powerful. So while the bottom two rear-wheel drive variants get from 0 to 100 in about 6.7 seconds, I've actually tested this car at just 6.5 seconds. The all-wheel drive Brabus is claimed to do the same century sprint in just 3.9 seconds. That's right, under 4 seconds. That is electric fast. I will have a separate review video for the Brabus version, so stay tuned for that one. But you know what? The regular versions are more than good enough for everyday drives. This has a 0 to 100 time of just 6.5 seconds, and when you drive it, it actually feels much quicker than that. This already feels far quicker, far more substantial than say a Mercedes GLA 250 or even X120i or 30i if it ever comes to Malaysia. For the #1 Premium, there are 3 driving modes: Eco, Comfort and Sport. For the most part, I'm driving around in the middle comfort mode, and this is the ideal settings for this car. I think it is more than quick enough, it is more than responsive enough as well. I'm cruising around at 80 kilometers per hour, but if I ever need a quick burst of acceleration, and yeah, the car just jumps forward. If you put it in sport, that initial response is a little bit more aggressive, but not overly more. This to me is more than good enough for 99, even 99.9% of all traffic situations, I'd say. In terms of power delivery, I think it's actually quite good that this isn't quite as snappy or as aggressive as a few other EVs are. This to me, even on full throttle, has a bit of a comfort feeling programmed into the software, so it's not as jarring or not as scary as say driving a Volvo C40 and you plant your foot down. I think less experienced drivers may be a little bit alarmed, a little bit scared by the response. This is fine for all drivers. Now let's talk about efficiency, where this car I think is no less than remarkable. I've averaged over about 400 kilometers of driving through various roads. This includes highways, traffic jams, city traffic, parking lots and so on, and I've averaged just 13.2 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. That is incredible. Previous cars I've tested within the same size, the same range, say the EQA, the iX1, they usually hover around 15-16 kilowatt hours per 100. This is significantly more efficient. That is amazing. Now compared against its total battery size, 66 kilowatt hours, net capacity or 62 kilowatt hours of usable battery, that works out to a maximum range of around 470 kilometers. And you know what? That's actually more than the WLTP claim of this car, 440 kilometers. I usually am very happy when a car gets within 90% of the WLTP claim. Here, this gets 110%. It is absolutely amazing. I always find it annoying when car makers overpromise and then under-deliver, especially when it comes to driving range. We've seen cars that claim to do 500 kilometers, but in the real world can barely reach 400. This is the very first EV that actually exceeds the manufacturer claims. I think that is beautiful. Beyond that, this also has one of the most accurate range indicators I've seen on EVs that I've tested so far. It gives you a very realistic projection of how far you can go with the same driving conditions. Plus, if you actually use the onboard navigation function, it can even map out the driving conditions of the route you're taking, the elevation, the drops, and all that, and it can measure how much battery you will have left once you've reached your destination. And if the car won't be able to reach a destination, you can even select multiple charging points in between. I've mentioned it before, I think this is the best integration of a navigation function on a Malaysian EV just yet. Now onto charging, where the #1 is still very impressive. It has an onboard 22 kilowatt AC charger, which is 3 times quicker than a typical EV in this price range. While cheaper EVs typically have a single phase 7 kilowatt charger and slightly more expensive cars have an 11 kilowatt charger, this has a full 22. So if you have a 22 kilowatt charger at home, you can charge it up to full or 90%, 85%, whatever you need in just about 2 to 3 hours. This is a massive advantage over other cars with slower charging rates that can take up to 7, 8, even 10 hours overnight. Now, I know it's not going to make that big of a difference if you're going to be charging it overnight anyway, but having this much quicker charging speed at home does give you a lot of extra convenience, a lot of extra flexibility of when you can charge it. You can just leave it charging in the morning after you've come back from a walk in the park or breakfast whatsoever. By the time you leave again to go to work, it might be fully charged. Then it is so good that it has a full 22 kilowatt charging capability even at home. Remember, this is a premium feature that is usually reserved for the very top-end EVs. Teslas all charge at just 11 kilowatts. All the high-end Hyundais only take 11s. Even most Mercedes-Benz BMW EVs take 11. This more affordable Smart takes 22. That's fabulous. Even for DC fast charging, it's not bad either. This has a maximum rate of up to 150 kilowatts, which is already faster than, say, a Mercedes-Benz EQA, let alone cheaper EVs like BYDs and so on. At the maximum rate, this can go from 10 to 80% SOC in just under 30 minutes. Now let's move on to the ride and handling of the Smart #1. Like I've asked in the beginning, there is a question whether this is going to feel like a Chinese car or a European one, and the answer is it's somewhere in the middle. Now, Chinese cars, especially their EVs, tend to be overly soft, a little bit roly-poly, whereas its European counterparts tend to be a little bit too stiff, a little bit too busy and harsh riding. This manages to strike at the exact middle ground, being comfortable enough for everyday driving, but still be dynamic enough to be enjoyable through the corners. I mean, this is not a Civic Type R, it's not a BMW M2 through the corners for sure, but this is far more dynamic than, say, a BYD Atto 3, for instance. The Smart brand being targeted towards the mini crowd, I'd say this should be more than enough to please demanding drivers, even those who are so used to, lower slung, harsh riding minis from before. It is that good. But at the same time, it's, again, not perfect. It is just that little bit too soft to feel a little bit floaty, a little bit too bouncy on straight highways. It's not quite as composed as, say, a Mercedes-Benz EQA. But then again, this is also much, much quicker, and I still think this strikes a better balance between comfort and dynamics compared to the Mercedes-Benz. The one thing I don't like about the way this car drives is how the brakes feel. This car gives you 3 options in the way the brakes operate. You've got 2 regenerative options plus a single pedal driving feature. None of the 3 actually feel natural enough. Even in the most gentle brake regen settings, I still find it difficult to modulate the throttle pedal for a slow and smooth slowdown. One thing that is not so great, however, is its refinement. Right now I'm just going at 80 kilometers per hour, and while there's not much wind noise coming in, there's plenty of tire roar creeping into the cabin. Perhaps it's due to the UHP tires fitted as standard on this car. This car rides on Dunlop Super Sport Max or whatever it is, and it may give a lot of traction, a lot of feel through the corners, but on the straight roads, on the highways, they do tend to make plenty of noise. Perhaps a more comfort, more touring oriented tires would fit this car better. Last but not least, let's talk about the ADAS active safety systems. This car gets the full suite of active safety systems, including level 2.5 semi-autonomous driving features across the entire range. Even if you buy the basic 189,000 Pro version, you get the full set of features. That is the right way to go. So as it is, you get the full usual functions of autonomous emergency braking, adaptive cruise control, active lane keep assist, blind spot monitor, and so on. But the semi-autonomous driving feature is actually pretty damn good. I can just press a single button over here and the car practically drives itself. Again, we are in Putrajaya, where all the road markings are not the most reliable, are not the clearest, but the car can cope rather well. This is equivalent by and large to Tesla's autopilot system, by which it can drive itself, it can control the throttle pedal, it can control the steering wheel, and so on. But having used this system a lot over the weekend, I can say that it isn't quite as good as what Tesla has. The way the car handles the steering wheel, and especially the brakes and the throttle, isn't quite as smooth as Tesla's autopilot. There is a little bit of that jittery movement, a bit of a jerky motion with the throttle and the steering wheel, which isn't quite as good as the best in the business. It certainly works and you can certainly trust it, but it just won't feel quite as comfortable as Tesla, Mercedes-Benz, BMW, and so on. One thing it does have over most other car brands is this, a driver monitoring system. This is a camera that is monitoring the driver, looking whether I am paying attention to the road or I'm just, watching the screen or looking out, daydreaming, whatsoever. And if I do that, this car will tell you and it will warn you to pay attention on the road, or, take a stop for a coffee or something. This feature will soon become a requirement in Europe, and since we are getting the exact UK units for the Smart #1, we're getting this feature here in Malaysia as well. That's pretty nice to know. Also, a big plus is this car's passive safety setup. You get 7 airbags as standard across the entire range, and that includes a center front airbag. Basically, if you get hit from the side, an extra airbag will deploy between the front 2 passengers over here to minimize any potential injuries. That is nice to know. Again, a lot of car brands have this feature across multiple models nowadays, but they are not putting it here on their local Malaysian cars. Smart, however, is putting everything it has onto the local cars. That is certainly nice to know. So that's my full review of the Smart #1 here in Malaysia. To me, this is an excellent small electric car through and through. It is rare for an EV to match, let alone exceed, its claim range, but the Smart has managed to do so right here on Malaysian roads. Beyond that, it also has above average driving dynamics, very good comfort, and a spacious interior as well. Of course, it has its fair share of quirks all around, but none that I would call deal breakers. Add to that its fantastic integration of the local charging network within the screen, and a smartphone app that is actually useful, and you've got a really good package here in Malaysia. Over to you, would you buy this over an electric Mercedes-Benz, Mini or BMW? Do let me know in the comment section below. If it's me buying a car in this market, I would definitely consider this over the Mini Electric, the Mercedes EQA, or even the BMW iX1. Do you agree with me on this or not? Do let me know in the comment section below. For now, thank you for watching everyone, and stay safe.